Shields up, Ironbreakers. Rurikhan here, coming at you with another video. Welcome back to Dauntless, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my Aether Strikers builds. Like I mentioned in my previous video, Dauntless has officially launched. We are no longer in the beta period of the game, and with this launch, they've added a new weapon type, the Aether Strikers. In that video, I did a full guide on the Aether Strikers moveset, as well as what I consider to be an optimal playstyle for my limited experience with the weapon. In case you guys missed that, you can check it out by clicking the link on the top right-hand side of this video. I would heavily advise you watch that first if you haven't played the weapon yet. The Dauntless team was once again kind enough to sponsor this video, for which I am very thankful, since I will only ever accept sponsorships for games or products that I actually play, use, or care about, and those are very few and far between. So if at any point in this video you get a sudden urge to brutally pummel a behemoth into the dirt, remember that Dauntless is free to play, and you can check it out by clicking the link in the description of this video. Dauntless also supports full cross-platform and cross-progression, so you can play with your friends regardless of their platform. The Switch version is coming later this year, which is really cool to me personally, because I was asking for a Switch version of Dauntless before it had even been announced for the other consoles. Anyhow, here's the build. Now, when it comes to the weapon, we went with Inferno's Flames, which are the strikers that you can craft from Hellion materials. The main reasoning behind that is because you got that Hellion bonus, which essentially every 8th hit in a row is going to deal an additional 250 damage, as well as a bunch of blaze damage, which, as you guys know, with this particular weapon, you're going to be hitting a lot, so you're going to be getting this bonus a lot. On top of it, you're also looking at 2 power cells, which is particularly good for offensive builds, and on top of it, you also get 3 overpower, which is a skill that we actually want. Now, when it comes to the mods, this is basically you're going to pick depending on the creatures that you are fighting. If the creature has minions, or if it's a multi-behemoth fight, you might want to go ahead and grab Titan's Crash. But for most occasions, you're most likely going to be going with Adamant Bolt, because who doesn't want the final flash mobs? And then with the other mod, personally, I like to go with Cyclonic Strike Plate quite a bit. But if your monster tends to get away from you quite often, you might want to go with Inertial Fist Guard. Personally, I don't really care that much about Echo Brace Driver, but then again, this is very limited testing at this point. I don't have like any hard numbers to justify that decision, but just overall, I tend to play Cyclonic Strike Plate, and it's just like if I'm fighting a monster that is too mobile or constantly getting away from me, then I will put in the Inertial Fist Guard so that we deal additional damage with Surge and gain that move speed to catch up to whatever is trying to run away from us. Now, when it comes to the cells that we're putting in here, we're starting off with an Overpower cell and a Knockout King cell. Now, when it comes to the armor, I'm going to go ahead and get the Skullforge. I know that probably a lot of you are going to be like, man, Skullforge doesn't bring its own skill and all that stuff, but I love the passive on Skullforge because it allows me to be a little bit more reckless with my stamina, because basically, as you guys know, what this does is a percentage of the damage that you deal becomes a stamina shield that will deplete after you not dealing damage for a short period, but it's just a good thing to be able to have more stamina with this so that you can run all over the place, stay on top of the monsters as much as you possibly can, because it is important for you to keep up the momentum like I told you in the Aether Strikers guide. Now, we're going to be putting a tough cell on here. This particular build is going to be extremely tanky and is going to allow you to take on some of the toughest behemoths without necessarily being able to dodge the best. Like if you're top-notch at dodging and avoiding attacks and all that stuff, there might be better builds for you, but this build is for you to be able to tank through stuff. So we're going to be taking a tough cell, and I'm going to be going over the skills at the end. And then we have Boreal Resolve plus 15, because we're going to be getting the Rage from the Boreal Resolve, because, you know, I am going to be using Iceborne and Tough, and therefore I want to get Rage with it as well. And in there, we're going to be putting an Iceborne cell. Now, finally, we have the Arms of Ice. This is because it's going to bring in some Knockout King and provide you with another defensive cell so that you can put another Iceborne cell in there. This is going to be cell intensive, so if you don't have cells, you best get on it if you want to make this build. And then finally, we got the Gnasher's Threads, which are going to bring in another 3 points in toughness, as well as +3 to Rage, which is going to max that out. And then we are going to be using Drask's Eye, because it's going to deal 30% increased damage for 6 seconds whenever you use your instant. And you also get the zappy attack that you get whenever you hold it. And we're going to use Conduit because, to be honest, I was thinking about a lot of different things in the utility cell, but Conduit just seems like the best, a little bit more attack speed. But this one's kind of like a throwaway skill. If you want to get something else, feel free to get whatever you want. Just don't get anything that gives you health whenever you stagger or health whenever you wound, because you want to stay at that 50% health sweet spot, because we're going to be using Iceborne, okay? So when you're looking at the final build, you're going to be looking at 6 Iceborne naturally, so whenever you're under 50% health, you're going to get 30% decreased damage taken and 8% lifesteal. You're going to get Knockout King because these are blunt weapons and they will deal a ton of stagger damage. I've KO'd plenty of monsters with this. It's super satisfying, so I want to get Knockout King. We got Overpowered naturally because once they go down, you want to make sure that you deal as much damage as possible. We got Rage because since we're going to be under 50% health, we might as well be dealing more damage. We got Tough. The reasoning for this one is because, you know, if you're fighting tougher behemoths, you want the additional healing from all sources, which does count, at least from my experience, it does count for Iceborne. As well as also gives you more health, which there's less chance of a monster one-shotting you from 50% health. And I know, one-shotting for 50%. You guys know what I'm saying. One-shotting you from your Iceborne status, okay? And then you got that 3 Conduit, which is whatever, but that's pretty much the build. Now, personally, I like tanky builds. That's why I rock Iceborne on a lot of my builds. This also makes the build more forgiving of mistakes. However, I made an alternate build in case you'd rather something a little less tanky and a little more spanky. Now, when it comes to the second build, we're going to be going for the Thundering Bolts. These are the weapons that you can craft from Drask parts, and the main reason behind that is because you're going to get a 30% damage bonus when you're striking the behemoth's head. And that is what you should be doing whenever you have a blunt weapon, because that is the best way to stagger the behemoth and create openings. So basically, you're getting a 30% damage bonus for doing what you should be doing in the first place. When it comes to modifications, the same stuff that I said on the first build applies. So in most situations, I'm personally going to be using Adamant Bolt, but if you are in a hunt that involves multiple targets, you might want to try out Titan's Crash depending on each situation. Now, for most situations, I'm still going to be using Cyclonic Strike Plate, but if your behemoth is particularly evasive, you might want to go for the Inertial Fist Guard. Now, for the first cell, I'm going to be going for +3 weighted strikes. I'm going to be maxing out the stagger damage of this weapon as much as I can, and we're going to go for another +3 Overpower cell, because Overpower is overpowered. See what I did there? I mean, basically, you're going to be staggering behemoths a lot with these weapons, so just having that flat 70% additional damage whenever they're staggered is just a complete no-brainer. Now, for the first armor piece, we're going to be going for the Bro of Ice. Now, this is going to give you +3 Knockout King and a power cell, which we will put with another Knockout King, basically maxing out the Knockout King skill, giving you as much stagger as you can possibly get. Now, when it comes to the chest piece, you might want to get something different, but I wanted to get something that benefited from dodging, so I went with Shell of the Swarm, which brings Blade Storm, and then I socketed with another Blade Storm cell so that you get max Blade Storm for breaking parts. You're going to be cracking that skull fairly early on in the fight, and I personally find that very satisfying, but you can also go after other specific parts if you want to break them down, because this is an extremely agile weapon. Then we're going to get another weighted strikes in the form of Shrike Down Gloves, and that is also going to be bringing us a mobility cell that I'm going to be putting +3 evasion, which is going to give us a little bit more invincibility frames on our dodge rolls, which is going to be particularly useful for this build. And then finally, we wrap things up with the Gnasher's Threads. They're going to give you +3 tough. It's just, I wanted something with another power cell to max out overpower. And basically, in this slot, you can put whatever armor piece you want, so long as you get a power cell in there. I went with tough, but there are other options that you can take. This basically gives you a little bit more survivability, so you pick whatever you feel like you want to pick at this point. Just make sure that you get a power cell to max out your overpower. And then when it comes to the lantern, I went with Koshai's Bloom. Now, the main reasoning behind this is because I still get hit very often when I'm playing Dauntless, and Koshai's Bloom is going to allow you to lifesteal from the monster and to stay in the fight. It also gives you an additional dash, keeping you even more mobile. Essentially, you're going to be having 2 dashes available to you most of the time, and you're going to socket that with an Etheric Attunement Cell so that you can gain more Lantern Charge so that you can teleport more often. But mostly, I'm using this particular lantern as a defensive option. If you want to go full-out offense, naturally, you guys already know you want to be going for the Drask's Eye, but you know, that's going to be up to each individual player. At the end of the day, with this build, you're going to be getting +6 Aetheric Attunement, +6 Blade Storm, adding that part damage, and also, whenever you dodge through an attack, you're going to deal a nice chunk of part damage. You also got Knockout King. When you dodge through attacks, you get even more stagger damage. You got your Overpowered. You got Weighted Strikes, which basically more stagger damage, and when you dodge, even more stagger damage. So this build is much more around dodging, which is why you then have the +3 evasion, increasing your iframes by 21%, and finally have the +3 tough, which, like I told you, is optional. You can get whatever else you want. It's really up to each individual player at that point. And that is my more offensive build. Now, as you know, I love experimenting with different builds, so I might come up with some different stuff in the future, particularly because, in my opinion, the Aether Strikers appear to benefit more than any other weapon from actually choosing the element your target is weak to. But that's pretty much it for this one. Now, if you're new to Dauntless and you've slayed a couple of behemoths and you're enjoying the game enough that you feel like you want to invest some money into it, you might find yourself looking at the store wondering what would be the best bang for your buck. My personal advice would be to go for the Timely Arrival Pack, which is the cheapest platinum you can get with a couple of bonus items, and then use that platinum to get yourself a hunt pass, since you'll be getting bonus mastery experience and loot from hunts, as well as a bunch of cosmetic stuff like these themed Aether Strikers. Once again, I'd like to thank the Dauntless team for sponsoring this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. If you didn't, then hit the dislike button, because feedback is very important to me. Feedback can also be provided in the comment section, as always, and if you enjoy the content, consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification icon to poke a YouTube intern with a cattle prod, which will hopefully get them to send you my videos. Thank you very much for watching. Stay strong, and may your shields never break.